Last year, after devastating hurricanes slammed into Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, President Trump repeatedly touted his administration's response as, quote, unbelievable, amazing, and incredible, end of quote. Unfortunately, the facts on the ground show just the opposite. The Trump administration completely botched a massive $156 million contract to deliver 30 million emergency meals in the aftermath of the storm. They ignored one of the key lessons from Hurricane Katrina, setting up advanced contracts for emergency provisions. Instead, they rushed to give this huge contract to a tiny one-person company with a terrible and obvious history of failing much smaller contracts. Predictably, they had to cancel the contract, all while thousands of starving American citizens were in desperate need of food. My staff uncovered this issue with absolutely no help from FEMA or the Department of Homeland Security or the White House. Despite our multiple letters requesting documents to explain this massive screw-up, we have not received one document regarding this issue. The Trump administration also completely failed to respond to desperate pleas for help from grocery stores that needed fuel to keep their food from spoiling, including tons of produce, dairy, and other perishables. My staff obtained documents showing that Walmart, explaining repeatedly that their grocery stores had generators in place, but they needed emergency fuel to keep the food from spoiling. Puerto Rican officials communicated these concerns directly to FEMA in person and in writing. But by September 27, a full week after the hurricane, no fuel was provided. Again, the Trump administration has refused to provide any of the documents we requested regarding this massive, and I mean massive, failure. Nearly 3,000 people died. 3,000 people died in this tragedy, more than in Hurricane Katrina. But rather than recognizing any failings by his own administration, President Trump accused Democrats of somehow manufacturing the death count. He tweeted, and I quote, "This was done by the Democrats in order to make me look as bad as possible," end of quote. Today, I'm releasing additional documents that also contradict President Trump's claims about his administration's response. Specifically, I'm releasing an email sent on November 29, 2017, 70 days after the hurricane struck. The email was sent to Mike Byrne, the top FEMA official overseeing the response in Puerto Rico. The senator's name is redacted, but it is from someone on the ground in Vieques, in Puerto Rico. This email warns that the conditions remain dire and, quote, with limited to no communications, quote, unquote, and that, quote, gas lines are in excess of 6 hours at times due to inconsistent delivery, end of quote. The email concludes this, and I quote, "Mr. Byrne, we need help. More than 2 months following Hurricane Maria, We are watching our local electric crews struggle to repair the system with no equipment and no material. We are hearing estimates that we will be 1 year without regular power. Why? End of quote. We can do better than this. The email was provided to a congressional office and directly to FEMA Administrator Brock Long. The forwarding email stated, and I quote, "Here is another example. I know that you have had a rough time in Houston, but at least you had competent people in charge of the response. We have incompetent people in charge here and are getting no response to our urgent needs. First of all, restoration of power. Please share this with Representative McCall, along with our urgent request for the Committee on Homeland Security to convene hearings on the utter failure of the federal response here and on the main island of Puerto Rico." End of quote. We have no record of whether Administrator Long responded to this email. Instead, we have press reports and Inspector General findings that Administrator Long abused his position of trust as the head of FEMA and charged the taxpayers tens of thousands of dollars for his personal use of government vehicles, which included a trip to Hawaii where a government employee shuttled his family around the island. Unfortunately and regrettably, this committee has failed the American people as well. In the immediate days after the hurricane, I asked the chairman to follow the bipartisan example of our former chairman, Representative Tom Davis, a Republican who investigated the Bush administration's response to Hurricane Katrina. I asked him to send the same letters that Chairman Davis sent to federal agencies and to the White House. Chairman Davis obtained more than 22,000 pages of documents from the Bush White House. And he also obtained a briefing from the top White House official in charge of the response. In contrast, Chairman Gowdy would not even send a letter to the White House. He would not ask for a single document. And we have not received a single document. This committee walled off the White House from scrutiny at the same time that President Trump was claiming that up is down and down is up. I greatly respect the chairman as a person, as an attorney, and as a friend. But this is not transparency. This is not accountability. And this is certainly not oversight. So with that, let me take care of a few housekeeping matters and ask unanimous consent on several motions. First, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record all of our letters regarding the botched $166 million contract to deliver 30 million meals to people of Puerto Rico.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also ask unanimous consent to enter into the record all of our letters regarding the Trump administration's failure to respond to urgent pleas from grocery stores to obtain fuel to run generators to prevent food spoilage.
Without objection.
Thank you. In addition, I ask unanimous consent that the new emails I'm releasing today that were sent to Administrator Long be entered into the hearing record.
Without objection.
Next, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this excellent report that our staff compiled based on our own independent investigation of the Trump administration failures.
Without objection.
Finally, I want to make clear that the Democrats asked for this hearing back on September 29th, 2017, more than a year ago. I ask unanimous consent that the letter from me and Ranking Member Plaskett be entered into the record.
Without objection.
Unfortunately, despite our requests, the committee held no hearings on the hurricanes in the past 14 months. Instead, this hearing was scheduled for today, which is the same day that we, as Democrats, have to be up and down in the Longworth building, organizing our entire caucus and voting on leadership positions and establishing our rules for the next Congress. Our Republican colleagues have promised to accommodate us, and I appreciate it. But they would not move the hearing to a different day, and they would not even move up the start time by 30 minutes so we could ask the Administrator Long our questions. So here's what I will do. I will take the questions we wanted to ask and submit them as official questions for the record. Administrator Long, I want answers to every one of these questions before the end of the year. When disaster strikes, the American people do not want politics. They simply want results. They do not want posturing. They want leadership. They do not want excuses. They want a nonpartisan, effective, and efficient response that saves lives.